The Russian convoy moved like a wall of iron across the Toretsk front. BTRs, tanks, support trucks, a formation meant to intimidate, not just fight. They weren't hiding, they were advancing. It was broad daylight, no cover, no urgency, just power rolling forward. Then, without warning, the first explosion cracked the silence. It wasn't artillery. It didn't come from behind Ukrainian lines. It came from above, small, fast, and nearly invisible. A first-person view drone, piloted by a Ukrainian soldier kilometers away, slammed into the lead vehicle. Fire, smoke, screams. Before the Russian soldiers could react, a second FPV drone struck the center of the convoy. A truck burst into flames, its cargo igniting on impact. Chaos spread like wildfire. Engines revved, vehicles swerved, some tried to reverse, but it was too late. Ukrainian drone operators had already predicted their movements. In less than 90 seconds, 5 drones had struck 5 different targets. Every shot was precise, every explosion was lethal. This wasn't a random ambush, it was a calculated trap. And now, what was once a mobile Russian attack group had become a pile of flaming steel. But that was just the beginning. From a distance, Ukrainian reconnaissance drones were still watching. They had spotted something, hiding behind the trees at the convoy's flank. A movement, a shadow, possibly a counterattack? But if that's what the Russians planned, they were already too late. Russian soldiers leapt from their vehicles and scattered like ants. Some ran for cover in the trees, others dropped and crawled across open ground. But the skies above were already full. 2 more Ukrainian FPV drones moved in low, weaving through the smoke, locked onto their next targets. One dipped under a power line, curved behind a half-burned truck, and slammed into a soldier hiding behind a wheelbase. The explosion threw debris in every direction. Another drone chased 3 men sprinting toward a ditch. The feed from the pilot's goggles was clear. They were trying to radio backup, but they'd never finish that call. The drone burst just inches from their feet. The screen went white. Above all of this Russian forces, these weren't top-tier million-dollar drones. Most were built using commercial components, modified in garages, and funded by public donations. Some cost less than $1,000 and were taking out armored vehicles worth millions. 1 drone, 1 strike, 1 less tank, 1 broken line of communication. Within 4 minutes, the entire Russian convoy had lost its formation. But deeper in the wooded area, Ukrainian recon spotted a second cluster of movement. Another unit, infantry, trying to regroup. And next to them, something unexpected. A long, boxy vehicle, not military, not standard. It looked like a mobile command station. Ukrainian drone teams locked on. They weren't done yet. The boxy vehicle in the trees was more than a truck. Recon operators confirmed it. A mobile command and control post, the kind used to coordinate forward strikes, house comms gear, and issue battlefield orders. If Ukraine destroyed it, the entire sector could go dark for the Russians. An FPV drone team called in from a nearby unit, piloting from a school basement turned command post 7 kilometers away. One pilot, call sign Spectre, took over. He maneuvered the drone low, weaving between burned husks and downed trees. The path was narrow, tight, risky, but every second counted.
Inside the vehicle, Russian officers were likely issuing fallback orders, reinforcements, escape routes, anything to salvage the mission. The drone edged closer, 5 meters, 4, 3. Then it struck. The explosion didn't just destroy the mobile tower, it ripped open the forest floor. Flames climbed 20 feet into the air. With comms cut, the remaining Russian soldiers in the area were blind. Some began to fire randomly into the trees, desperate to hit something, anything. But they weren't shooting at men, they were shooting at ghosts. Above them, Ukrainian drones circled like hawks, quiet, unshaken. The pilots watched through heat signatures. They knew exactly where each soldier was. And now, the real cleanup was about to begin. Because another unit, one even more advanced, had just entered the zone. And they didn't come with wings. They came on wheels. It rolled through the underbrush like a hunter in the dark, small, silent, barely knee-high, but carrying death. The Deus Ex Machina unit's robotic ground vehicle was built for missions like this, to plant TM-62 anti-tank mines and flee before anyone knew it was there. This time, though, it wasn't laying mines. It was carrying a custom explosive payload designed to detonate on proximity, a rolling kamikaze. It crept behind two Russian soldiers crouched near a fallen pine. They didn't notice until the machine's sensor light flicked red. One turned. Boom. The explosion lifted dirt, smoke, and bodies into the trees. This was psychological warfare in motion, a battlefield without a face. Another robot moved in, dropping mines along a likely retreat path, not for vehicles, but for humans on foot. The Russian unit was trapped. That's when one of them made a desperate decision. He pulled out a large piece of cardboard and scrawled a message with shaking hands. The drone overhead captured every word. "We surrender. Please, don't drop again." They held the cardboard to the sky and stood still. The Ukrainian recon drone confirmed. An FPV unit was sent, not to attack, but to guide them in. It hovered low, blinking, and turned slowly, leading the soldiers through a safe path. And that's how 5 Russian infantrymen, surrounded by fire and metal, were led, step by step, into Ukrainian custody. But this wasn't mercy. This was strategy. Because as they surrendered, a Russian backup unit had just crossed the Kursk line. And they were bringing in something new. Across the Kursk border, just hours after the Toretsk ambush, another Russian convoy was mobilizing. But this one was different. No tanks, no troop transports, just a single rare vehicle, long, wide, with a robotic arm extending from its frame. Ukraine's recon team flagged it instantly.
ZM Lead. A remote-controlled mine-laying system. Russia's new strategy wasn't offense. It was obstruction. They wanted to litter Ukrainian terrain with deadly traps, slow the momentum, change the tempo of the war. But they were already being watched. Ukrainian FPV pilots launched 3 drones. The first was assigned to hit the barrel-mounted deployment system. The second, the wheels. The third was waiting. The first impact sent the vehicle into a violent swerve. The second strike disabled the axle. The ZM Lead began to smoke, reversing slowly as its crew tried to flee. That's when Drone 3 made its move. The operator had one target, the fuel tank. He dove in low, skimmed past the undercarriage, and detonated at the rear. A thick, black plume spiraled into the sky. The system was inoperable. Another weapon erased. But Ukraine didn't celebrate, because further east, on the ballista unit's surveillance feed, new heat signatures were showing up near the Russian supply lines. Not soldiers, not armor, something faster, something smaller. They weren't convoys, they were couriers, Russian logistics squads riding ATVs and motorcycles, stripped down, low-visibility teams designed to evade drone detection. They zipped across open roads, hugging tree lines, trying to deliver fuel, food, and munitions to crippled sectors. But Ukraine's ballista unit was waiting. They had mapped every supply route used in the past 72 hours, and now FPV drones hovered high above the kill zones.
One courier, carrying fuel canisters on a quad bike, sped down a gravel path. He didn't see the drone behind him. It descended quietly, exploded on impact. A trail of fire followed as the canisters ignited. The rider vanished in the flames. Another drone spotted two motorcycles cutting through a wheat field. They didn't make it past the tree line. Within an hour, 7 supply routes were compromised. Ballista's drones weren't just targeting machines, they were severing arteries. The Russian front line began to suffocate. But it wasn't just the drones causing panic. Ukrainian recon drones had just discovered something disturbing hidden along the edge of a civilian farm compound. A pattern, a cluster of vehicles in formation, too clean to be random, too quiet to be harmless. From 800 feet up, the compound looked abandoned. Scattered debris, no human movement, just a few trucks parked close together near a barn. But on infrared, the story changed. There were people inside, armed, watching. Ukrainian command suspected a Russian mobile garrison had set up a temporary launch post, possibly using civilians as cover. No artillery, no tanks, just infantry and signal equipment. They waited for confirmation. That's when a fiber-optic drone was deployed, capable of snaking through tight spaces and feeding video in real time with zero interference. The drone slipped under a fence, past hay bales, through a crack in the barn door. Inside, Russian soldiers, awake, armed, with portable jamming tech and map tables. They weren't retreating, they were coordinating. Ukraine couldn't afford to wait. 2 FPV Kamikaze drones were sent in, one through the roof, one through the window. Seconds apart. The barn exploded. The roof split in two. The walls caved inward. Flames danced along the edge of the field. But there was no time to confirm the kills, because just 3 kilometers away, a Russian BTRD armored vehicle was rolling straight toward Chasiv Yar, and it was entering a trap. Chasiv Yar had been quiet for hours, too quiet. But it wasn't neglect, it was calculation. Ukrainian forces had placed remotely controlled mines across a narrow dirt path leading into town, disguised under dust, wired to a field controller nearby. The BTRD approached. Recon drones above tracked every inch. Then, the controller flipped the signal. A thunderous explosion swallowed the lead wheels of the vehicle, flipping it at a violent angle. Metal twisted, smoke shot upward. Russian soldiers stumbled out, coughing, bleeding, panicked. They ran for the tree line. They didn't make it. 3 FPV Kamikaze drones darted in from the west, striking in precise sequence. The last soldier tried to raise his weapon, but the drone got there first. Chasiv Yar stayed under Ukrainian control, but the enemy was shifting its tactics again. This time, they weren't bringing vehicles. They were coming on foot. Dense vegetation, heavy fog, no motors, no metal. Russian infiltration squads were using pure camouflage, creeping on foot through abandoned settlements and forest lines. But drones weren't their only enemy. Ukrainian recon teams had synced up with artillery crews. Every GPS coordinate of movement was relayed in real time. As soon as one unit reached a derelict cottage, shells fell from the sky. The ones who fled were chased by kamikaze drones. Some reached nearby farmhouses, but recon saw the heat signatures. A single shell leveled the structure. Those who remained in the open had nowhere left to run. Survivors tried to crawl into bushes, under fencing, between walls. The drones circled back. One by one, they ended the movement. It was quiet again, but not for long, because back in Kharkiv, a drone pilot reported something strange. A convoy had entered from the northeast, only it wasn't Russian, and it wasn't responding to any signals. The footage came from a long-range surveillance drone flying above the Kharkiv Oblast. It showed a convoy, 7 vehicles, spaced out evenly, moving in perfect sync. But there were no markings, no heat signatures suggesting human drivers, no transponders. The vehicles were black, polished, silent. Too clean for war, too slow for panic. Command analyzed the footage in real time. These weren't Ukrainian. They weren't Russian. They weren't civilian. And they didn't match any known model in current military databases. Then came the strangest part. The lead vehicle stopped. The others followed. Each one opened from the rear, not with hatches, but with side-sliding doors, like cargo units. Except no one stepped out. Instead, a sound. High-pitched, mechanical, like pressure being released, or gears shifting. The drone feed began to distort. A field of static. The pilot tapped his headset. Nothing. The command post tried to reset the link. Failed. And then, darkness. The screen cut. The drone never reconnected. Whatever that convoy was, it had shut the signal down. The last image captured before the feed went black was a single drone, lifting silently from the rear of the final vehicle. It looked familiar.